Hello, my name is Doug Smith. Today is 2 November 2012. Welcome to Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our topic today is the Portsmouth emergency response to Hurricane Sandy, which we all just went through. And my special guests today are John Klimm, Town Administrator. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
And Police Chief Lance Hebert. Chief, thank you for your time today, for coming down here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hurricane Sandy was a lot bigger storm than that we had last year during Irene. But at first glance, it looks like Portsmouth came out relatively okay. John, how would you rate the Portsmouth emergency response to this storm?
I think in a nutshell, it was impressive. And I can't compare it to initiatives in the past because I wasn't here. I compare it to what I'm used to in other communities. I think it was well coordinated. I give a lot of credit to John King, our EMA director, who provides guidance to all of us and a tremendous amount of expertise and knowledge that helped us all the way through the effort. I think that the volunteers should be recognized. We had a cadre of volunteers that really made a difference. So all in all, while we always can improve, and we should improve during each instance, I think it was impressive, and I was pleased to see what I did. And I don't just mean within the EOC, the emergency center, but also on the street. You know, at the height of the storm, I was driving around with our fire chief and others, and we saw the officers of the police department, saw our men and women of our fire department and public works, and I think we were very well served.
Okay, thanks. I would agree. I was in the EOC, and I think I agree with everything you just said. One of the tools we had that we didn't have during Irene, thanks to you, really, was Code Red and this reverse 911 call system. How did that work during this storm?
Well, this was our first go at it, and overall, the chief is really involved in coordinating it, but I was very pleased with it and delighted that our town council voted to support the funding for it. Other than the variety of other techniques that we use, press releases and our Facebook and the like, the Code Red as a tool is the most penetrating because you're able in a very short period of time to contact the most people, and so I was very pleased with it.
Chief, was that your voice, by the way, on the...
Yes, it was.
Yes, I thought I recognized your voice.
And hopefully it came in clear
loud and clear,
concise.
absolutely.
And loud and clear. Yes, the Code Red, the departments in town, police, fire, DPW, were very, very pleased that when the town accepted the Code Red system. What it does is it allows us to be able to reach out and touch the type of numbers that need to be touched to get out that information. We do have our email, we have our to the press, both TV and radio and local blogs, but along with the websites, Twitter and Facebook, you just cannot reach out and touch the type of people. We went about instituting the Code Red, given the information on the storm. We went through several pre-storm meetings with Mr. King and EMA staff and with Mr. Klimm, and we really just wanted to make sure that when we put the Code Red out, we're putting it out at the appropriate time with the most up-to-date information. So different towns have put out early Code Red, say 72 hours before. We tried to get it out when we knew that it would be the most beneficial, that people would actually pay attention to it and take the information, that it was hard information, it was good information, and our EMA staff, you guys did a tremendous job of being able to provide us with that. When the decision was made to begin calling, we began calling at 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday to be able to put this out. We reached out to over 9,000 people. Wow. We got a connections ratio of over 6,600. And according to Code Red, that's pretty good for the first time around, because you have to take into consideration that this is new and that people still have to be urged to go online and be able to get their hard lines that aren't published registered, and also all cell phones.
Right.
Which at this time I'd really like to make a plea to the public to please go on our EMA website, portsmouthemergency.com, or our police website, portsmouthpoliceri.com, and sign up, because it's only by you signing up that we were able to reach out and get the information out. They were able to do this with follow-up calls, and finally Code Red was finished at 3:23 to be able to reach out for all of those people that are registered, because if you're not home and no one picks up, they will try calling back 2 more times.
I have to tell you, from a public standpoint, I received, I think the first one was on my home phone.
Yes.
Then I got it on my cell phone because I had signed up to have it on my cell phone. And I had also gotten an email. So I got it 3 different ways, probably within a half an hour of each other.
Yeah, I have those stats also, and that is for emails, we reached out and touched 1,345 people. So between us and the water department, which had previously gone on the year before, that's been a huge help of being able to combine all of those. Sure. We also reached out and touched 891 people by text message. And we also had 87 people that used the mobile app that may not be from around this area, that are visiting or planning on visiting or coming through. So we were able to reach out and touch them to be able to tell them what our status was and what evacuation areas they should avoid.
Okay, so the takeaway though for the public is, if you didn't get these messages, or if you're not signed up yet, make sure you go online and log in and do what you have to do to get signed up for Code Red.
Yes, because we also know that nowadays not everybody has a hard line in their phone, in their house anymore, that a lot more people are dropping their hard lines and going to a cell phone. But during times of emergency, the public should also know that keeping a hard line is something that you really do have to think about, because cell phone coverage will go down. And one of the last remaining areas that is proven is the old copper line method. And believe it or not, it is still true and tested, and it's a good thing to keep.
Absolutely. One of the things we had talked about last week when we did a special program on the emergency management function in Portsmouth was the fact that Code Red is like really serious, and I applaud you guys for being very judiciously, using it just when you needed to and when you needed to put out an important message. And I think the fears were initially that people would be bombarded with constant calls, and that was not the case in this thing. So I think it worked very well, partly because of that reason.
And the chief was coordinating with our officials from our school department, because we didn't want people to be getting messages at the same time or whatever. So it was very coordinated amongst the various departments.
Chief, speaking of your department, do we have any serious injuries or deaths in Portsmouth, or were there any major incidents that required police
There were no major incidents. There was no reported injuries. We had only 2 minor accidents due to the slippery conditions, due to the leaves and the wet roads. But for the most part, people stayed off the roads for traffic volume. We still did have a problem with several people driving around. And we urge those people during storms to stay home and stay sheltered, but you're always going to have people that are going to be out and driving. You also have people that are last minute, getting out of work. You have emergency responders coming in and out. We understand that. We had over 112 calls for service for hurricane related during the peak times, which was 7 a.m. Monday morning until 7 a.m. Tuesday morning. And those calls were for power outages, those were for alarms. The majority were for officers having to clear debris, and it could be minor. I mean, officers will get out and they will clear whatever debris from the roadway they can. If they can't, then Public Works is called in, and also the tree trimming company that was on standby to be able to take the real heavy stuff so we could clear those.
Okay.
And then standing by also for all the down power lines, because if they're live, you have to have an officer there until National Grid can respond.
Now, did you get a lot of 911 calls during this?
We received a few, but most people used our non-emergency or even the old emergency line. If it was a 911 call, it was usually due to a power line that was sparking or something where someone really realized that there could be a potential threat.
Yeah, that could be very dangerous out there.
Very dangerous.
I know that both your department and the fire department were really engaged during the storm. Were there any? And one of the things we saw that I thought was very strange was in New York in the Breezy Point section when the rain poured down and then all of a sudden all these houses caught on fire. Do we have any fires or anything like that going on at the time in Portsmouth and during Sandy?
I don't have anything to report. as far as knowing that. I don't believe the fire department had any fully engaged fires.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact. There were some calls that, you know, in reference to sparking for wires, and fire department will respond along with police
Yeah.
and National Grid, and found that it was just basically, it was electrical, but nothing really caught on to any houses, and we were very lucky in that respect.
Sure. I know that there were some calls for the rescue folks down at the firehouse, but it didn't seem like anything, you know, gigantic.
No, people hopefully took the storm, and they take every storm, whether it's a nor'easter or it's a tropical storm or a hurricane, that they take that, and that people who do have medical issues go to higher ground or go to a place where they be more protected, so that during the storm, when they lose power, especially for you know, life-saving equipment that they need, they're able to keep up or go someplace that has a generator.
Yeah. And speaking of that, and we spoke last week about this, we don't have a primary shelter here in Portsmouth. The primary shelter, Red Cross shelter on the island, is at Gaudet Middle School.
Correct. That's the primary, yes.
Do we have any Portsmouth residents actually go to the shelter in Middletown?
The numbers I got, there were 8 people.
Okay.
At any given time in the Middletown shelter. We did have people that did call the police department or the fire department requesting knowledge of where to go, and to confirm, you know, how come maybe they couldn't go to Portsmouth, but we made sure that they knew about the Middletown Gaudet. And the reason for this is that the Red Cross does not have the sufficient amount of volunteers to open up all the shelters all at the same time.
Yeah.
I know every community would like to have their own, but during these times with limited resources, for 8 people, it sounds better to coordinate all of our efforts and make sure that we have everybody, all the things that are needed in that one place. Now, if we got hit with a major storm, people need to be reassured Portsmouth would open. As soon as Middletown sees that they would be inundated or start to get filled, the Portsmouth shelter would be opened.
So the real issue has to do with probably Red Cross and other resources plus volunteers.
Yes.
Yeah. I know that was an issue for some people. One of the problems that came up briefly was it was as I recall, like a senior citizens home that had lost their generator when their power went out. Their generator didn't come on. How would you go about dealing with that? If as it turned out, the generator came back up, I guess. But what was the general response to that, and how would you do that? Do you have procedures for that?
I actually was in the vehicle driving around with the fire chief and the interim deputy, so I got to witness exactly what did happen. And our fire chief took control and began the planning process of locating a bus for transportation so that we could transport the 80-some-odd folks to the Middletown shelter. Fortunately, during that process of about a half an hour, the generator was they were able to fix the generator and it came back on, so we didn't have to transport. But our fire department went right to work to try to coordinate an effort to transport, and they would have done that if it was needed.
Okay, so we do have kind of procedures for doing that then.
There's a direct SOP contingency plan for any type of evacuation, whether that would be for any type of assisted living or elderly residents, or even if we had a flash flood, or if something bad happened, say in the Island Park, Common Fence Point, low-lying area, where the initial storm reports or the storm surges came in less than what we thought they were going to be, and they overwhelmed us. We would be able to get those buses down there and get them in a safe place, get those people to those locations, and be able to bust them out of there.
Yeah. One of the things that we had this year that we didn't have during Irene was the escape bridge.
Correct.
So that gave Island Park residents an alternative way to get out. So when Park Avenue was flooded, they could always get out the other way, so it probably didn't seem as serious to them, and also you could get emergency responders to them as well. One of the key issues in all of these storms, certainly during Irene and during this one as well, was the loss of electric power. How have we figured out how to coordinate this with National Grid?
Well, I can speak on that. You were in the ops center. One major thing that was done this year was that National Grid reached out, and with John King, and Mr. Klimm was able to have National Grid embedded or take up their residence in our EOC. So we had a direct contact with National Grid throughout the storm and even for the 2 days after the storm. National Grid does take this very seriously, and they wanted to be in a town where they could have an official ops center and be able to have all the communication devices that they needed. And that was a huge help because we actually see now what National Grid, how they structure and how they prioritize. But having them there, we were able to get the information, even though we have special numbers that we call into for police and fire and EMA into National Grid. I thought it was very beneficial having them here with us.
Sure. The Emergency Operations Center, when you do stand it up, I thought was one of the best features of it was kind of the synergy, because you have all these, you have your communicators, you have the internet folks, and you had National Grid right there on the site, so if something popped up, everybody would hear it and be able to respond to it in their own kind of way. But let me talk to you. You might want to tell us a little bit about how the EOC operates and when it goes into 24-hour operations, for example, and when it might stand down and that kind of stuff.
The EOC, this has been a plan from the state of Rhode Island and nationally with Incident Command. And like with anything, it takes its time to be able to come down to get the people trained and to be able to understand how to operate one. Portsmouth, during the last couple storms and then after Irene, has taken it very seriously. And with the volunteers and Mr. King working together to be able to bring a group of people together with all of their different experience and their understanding of how emergency operations centers can work and how we needed to structure ours here in the town of Portsmouth to be able to work with the already existing departments, goes along with the incident command or combined incident command. And what this has done, this has taken a tremendous amount of pressure off the police and the fire departments to be able to have those types of communication and those type of experienced people in the EOC for the entire time. The EOC was stood up on Sunday at 12 o'clock, and it's done for this so that we can prepare and be able to get all of this information together and do a much better job. Instead of the police and fire being overwhelmed with the type of phone calls, people are starting to realize they might not have to call the police and fire, that they can call the EOC and that information will be distributed where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and again, I think one of the things that everybody improved on a lot from Irene, from my perspective at least, was the public communications, the getting the word out to the people kind of as it occurred, using social media venues and things to try to see what did they want to know. So it was kind of two-way in that sense.
But if I can too, I really want to hammer home the point, and that is, it is a tremendous resource in that the forethought and the actual implementation of having a proper EOC. The workload that it takes off the police and the fire, I can't tell you how much. After 25 years of service and seeing how we've grown, we have a manageable system. We have a system that doesn't take away from the resources for police and fire on the street. Because if the EOC wasn't there, we would have to be doing all of those, which creates one less man on the road to having to either answer phones or having to document everything that goes on.
See, I think a lot of it is if you tell people, they don't have to come in and call you to ask for it. Mm-hmm. John, how do you think the social or the public information thing went during this?
I think in the last 6 months ago, we've come light years in terms of that whole approach. You know, in the past, there's been some frustration that we weren't utilizing all the tools that are commonly available to other towns. And there's been some frustration because we don't have an IT department. We don't even have an IT person in the day-to-day operations of the town. And so what I think people had heard in the past was it'd be nice to do that, but we don't have a professional staff to do it. So we just figured out, you know, how can we do it? And the key here has been citizen volunteers. You know, we have a Facebook presence, Twitter presence. We have a website with a blog that was very, very helpful during the storm. And probably more than anything else, that's the most exciting thing that has happened during the last week or so, to watch the the presence on Facebook dramatically increased with the numbers of residents that were accessing our Facebook account and Twitter and also our website. So that's really good news. I mean, the downside in terms of improvement, we want to try to bring in more volunteers, because we had incredible volunteers, but we were asking them to work 12-hour shifts, which is just too long. And so we want to encourage in this whole process to see if there are citizens out there that might want to volunteer. I think you could probably, as one of the key volunteers, could testify that I hope that you understand how important a role that you and your friends played in this whole thing, whether it be, you know, Al and Rich on the radios, or you folks on the internet. You know, the chief is busy doing his thing and I was doing my thing or whatever, and the presence of the volunteers and the reality that we were reaching out using every technique that we know, I think really made a difference. And the excitement is not that it was perfect. We have a long way to go, but the excitement is that we have taken the first step, and we all know what needs to now happen to improve the situation. So that's really exciting.
Well, we stood up something we call the IPI team, the Internet Public Information Team. And what's interesting is that FEMA now, you talked about FEMA and the ICS program. FEMA now has courses on the use of social media, as well as just other courses that all of the volunteers have taken. They're all online courses. They just require you to go online and do a little reading and take the tests. But I had the midwatch from Monday at midnight till noon on Monday. And I have to say, except for a couple hours, it was actually kind of exciting, because once, dark 30 in the morning, nothing happens, but then people start asking questions and things, and you're able to either turn to somebody else in the room and get an answer and blog it, or put it out for somebody else to come up with an answer, like National Grid or something, or Portsmouth Patch. It seemed to work pretty well, but we would like to get a few more volunteers, hopefully a little younger than most of us. It seemed to work reasonably well. Again, we don't think it's the final answer. One of the problems is, of course, is number one, everybody is not on the internet all the time. And number two, the internet may go down. It's going to go down when power changes. So luckily we had the other outlets, the press releases, the contact with WADK and the other radio stations, and Portsmouth Patch played a good role in this thing too. So I think it's got a lot of prospects going forward, but if anybody wants to contact me or anybody else in the EMA about joining our IPI team, please do. Let me just ask you this, Chief. How did you coordinate when you were, I know you were in and out of the EOC a lot, but how did you coordinate with John and the rest of the town leadership on some of these bigger issues?
Anything that comes in, as it comes in, it's directly usually either on the cell phone or on the telephone, or even via radio with John or Mr. Klimm or the fire department. It's a communication issue, and we run through this for every storm we've ever had, and we build on it. And a lot of things we have contingency plans for, but there's a lot of times there is no plan, because that situation never ever came up. So it's the cohesive working together to be able to find an answer, find it fast, or if one department head needs to make an immediate decision, that decision then is followed through, and the other departments follow in and find out exactly where their place is, whether that is a downed tree and DPW is trying to get to it. The police are responding to make sure that we can clear the way, make sure that they can work safely. Fire department is there to make sure if there was any injuries or any type of, if it was an accident, to be able to clear and get the patients or the people that are hurt out of there. A lot of public rescue work, or police and fire. Basically, it's not so much. It's a wait and see a lot of times during a storm, because you never know where the trees are going to come down. And we dispatch our officers. There were several times where we had guys tied up on certain roads because we had to shut them down until National Grid could come, shut that power off, get those lines cleared out, and then bring in the proper personnel to be able to clear the road. Or if we couldn't clear the road, then we had to keep it. We were fortunate to be able to at least get some National Guard help. So
really?
We were able to get 2 units to be able to help out with the Jepson Lane and Oliphant Lane in Middletown. There was a tremendous amount of poles that went down. So there was wires that were bare and they were all over the place. So we were able to get through the state EOC in connection with our EOC to make those requests, and that system worked.
Yeah. One of the key things that, again, this, you don't have to remind me of this, I was in the Navy for 30 years, but the idea of communications that are redundant, that you have several different ways, and just let me give you one example of that. I know, John, the town hall was without, I think you had telephones, but you didn't have internet for a while. And if people wanted to contact you, you end up falling back to cell phones or anything else. But the point is, we have a very robust and a bunch of different layers of ways to communicate with people. And I think that's something we probably need to memorialize going forward, you know.
Well, I know that on the public safety side, we have tremendous amount of redundant features. But that's one of the things that we are going to work on as far as getting our other town agencies, such as Town Hall, after the storm, didn't have any phone or internet for a while because the power was down. So there are other alternatives to be able to look into after this storm, sitting down with, say, Cox Cable and other agencies to be able to find out what do we need to do to make sure that we have other redundant systems to be able to help back that up.
Now, I assume there's going to be some kind of post-storm debrief where everybody gets together and comes up with lessons learned and what we did and what we didn't do.
There actually is. It was actually going to be today, but John King is busy with a team from FEMA over on Prudence Island this morning. So
they're doing damage assessment of?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we will have a review, overall review next week, and certainly would love to come back to a future program in the near future to report what we think our strengths and weaknesses were. And there's also, I know you want to talk about the opportunity to allow citizens to weigh in through a survey that's being done.
We've got there is a survey that's been prepared. We're going to be putting it up shortly, and it'll be on SurveyMonkey, so it's an internet-based survey, but people will be able to access it either from the town website, the EMA website, or I'll be blogging it as well, and so you can find the link there to click on it. And we're essentially just looking for people to tell us how they think it went out there. Another question, though, on the hot wash-up, on the debrief and everything. Will there be some kind of a public report on that?
Yes.
So the public can see what's...
Yes, we will have a report, and as I said, we also would like to through TV, through this program, outline what we think the strengths and weaknesses are. We want to make sure, as I said, that report contains input from our citizens. But yes, it will be a public document. We will be issuing that when it's completed. Okay,
super. I'd like to thank both of you gentlemen for coming in today. I know you have plenty of other things to do in the aftermath of Sandy. I would like to mention, you can check John's nice badge there. We've got badges for the Portsmouth 375th. We've got this great looking bumper sticker, which will be available at the library and perhaps other places. So you want to get out there and show your pride in Portsmouth, this is the way to do it. And just contact anybody who's on the steering committee that has access to the badges, and you too can get one of those. That's about it for me. We're just about out of time. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.